Talofa lava and welcome to the Global Pasifika Success Podcast. I'm Andrew Fa'avali, your host. Every week I'll be chatting with successful Pacific people from across the globe, unpacking their stories and more importantly, picking out insights, lessons and golden nuggets you can use to live your best life too. Okay, so welcome back to the Global Pasifika Success Podcast. This week, have a very special guest with us. We have Lisa Tai, and Lisa is from the beautiful islands of Rotuman. She was born in Fiji and is now settled in Auckland, New Zealand, with her husband and two children. She's the associate director. She's an associate director at Deloitte, which is one of the massive global consulting firms. So proud to see Pacific people in these places of influence and in these really influential companies as well. Lisa has a Bachelor of, Commerce and Economics from the Auckland University of Technology, and she's in the finance and crime sector.
Yeah, good.
Right.
Good research.
So thanks so much, Lisa, for jumping on and welcome. How are you going?
I'm good. I just said I'm good, but I lied because we were just talking about how tired we are. But no, I'm good. Yeah, it's been a long week, so it's great to be talking to you on a Friday afternoon. What a nice way to end the week. So thank you for having me.
Cool, thanks, man. I just wanted to know, can you just explain a little bit about, because let's just frame the conversation with where you're at right now. So can you tell us about Deloitte and also about associate director?
Yeah, so Deloitte is one of the big, I guess most people would know Deloitte is one of the big four accounting firms. And I think there's a big misconception that we're a team full of accountants, but we're not. We have lots of different service lines. So you do things like audit and tax and private here, but we also have other service lines like consulting and cyber and risk advisory. So I sit in the forensic team, which is under risk advisory. And essentially, my job, the way I described it is, if you think of fraud investigations, and I've been doing this, I think I'm in my 14th year now. So we're the ones that get the call when the company down the road might think, hey, Bob's been stealing some money from me. Can you come and help me and see what's happened and how much did he steal and who did he work with and how did he do it and can we get the money back? So I've been doing fraud investigations for probably about 10 years now, and then did analytics, so data analytics for a little bit. So using technology to find the fraud or find anomalies or other inappropriate behaviour. And then over the last couple of years, I've moved more into the advisory space. So because we know fraud happens and we know why it happens and I guess the lack of controls and processes that allow it to happen, we're in a pretty good space to stop it from happening or to advise clients around, how do you protect yourself from things like fraud and corruption and other things that people shouldn't be doing. So yeah, I love it. I've been doing it for 14 years, been in the same team. And I think while, Deloitte and Big Four can feel like a really big space, the team that I'm in is relatively small in comparison to some of the others. So awesome culture, awesome team, great work. And over the last 12 months we've established the Pasifika Services Group here at Deloitte, New Zealand, which has been incredible. It's definitely been a career highlight for me. And so we've now just gone through our brand and identity that we want to launch. And I'm very proud to say we're going with the Rotuman name. So our new name is called Pås Peau, which is Rotuman for breaking through waves. So that element of my role, so it's I guess two hats, so 50% doing forensic and the risk advisory associate director space, and then the other 50% is trying to get this. Well, we are doing the Pasifika Services Group, which has been awesome. It's been really fulfilling.
Awesome, and congratulations for that. It's so good to have Pacific recognition inside one of the big four, especially in New Zealand, where we make up a massive part of the population. Not massive, but a significant part of the population. But what does an associate director do? What's up with that title? And that
good question. Still trying to figure it out. So, I guess for companies like this do have different levels, and we sort of start with grads and you go right up to partner level here, and so I guess associate director to be like to be considered as part of the management group or leadership of our team. which is really cool. So I guess in an associate director role, you're doing some of the work, so doing some of the delivery directly with clients, but you're also managing projects, and then also managing the team or helping to manage the team, which is the part that I really like. And then in an associate director role, you're also looking after some of the business development type activities too. So I guess moving away from the doing part, which I still really like, and still coming to grips with not being able to do all the time, and more of, I guess, what someone might consider to be more of a management type role.
Man, it sounds really important and influential, and there's no wonder that you're tired at the end of the week, because it sounds like you do 5 people's jobs in one.
Oh no, we have Andrew. We have a really cool team, right? Like we've got some really smart people, especially the grads and the analysts and the young people that we have. I was saying to someone earlier, I'm so glad that I'm in this position now, because I would never have made it in if I was competing with some of the grads and the young people that we get coming through now. They are off the chart. So it's pretty exciting to be in a space like this, and I think it's one of the benefits that that come from working in a big firm. You're just exposed to so many smart people that are passionate about their work and want to succeed and want to do well. So I guess to be surrounded by that 5 days a week is pretty, it rubs off, and it's pretty incredible, really.
Oh, what? I'm jealous. I work by myself. I guess we get sick of each other. She definitely gets sick of me, but man, I feel like I want to be in your team.
Yeah, and yes, that was the thing with COVID and lockdown. We're so used to seeing people all the time, and then for a few weeks, we had to get used to, oh, hold on, it's just me. I can, have Zoom and stuff, which is great, but I know I was definitely missing the human interaction part of the job. So Zoom is great, but nothing can replace being in person with people. So I love being back in the office with my team.
Yeah, how important it is, because I've read somewhere that they say in Western cultures, knowledge is power, and in Pacific cultures, relationship is power. So I just want to talk to the part of your role that speaks to managing a team, because, I think we live in this collective kind of environment as Pacific people, and we're usually pretty good at relationships. But what is it like for you, or what are you trying to drive home in terms of managing or leading a successful team?
There are lots of different parts to my role, but the part that I really like is the people part, and I guess helping young people achieve, I guess just reach for their potential, or to seek out their potential. So for me, it's really funny, because someone asked me to describe what kind of leader I'd like to be, and I've always thought that I want to be someone that was seen as authentic, empathetic, and I guess supportive and just genuine. Like that's taken some time to get there, and I think when I reflect back on the early days, I definitely wasn't that. And I don't know if it's having children and just you get a bit, you're wiser as you get older, but being able to, I guess, show the young people that a good leader comes in different forms, and attributes like being vulnerable and open, and not casual is probably not the word, but just being your, I know it's very token, but being your authentic self at work isn't a bad thing, and that's they can be qualities of a really good leader here. So I guess still it's still work in progress. There's still aspects of managing people that I would like to improve, but I love working with a team. I'm definitely a team person rather than someone that prefers to work on their own.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for that. Really great insights. Can we just, I guess, jump back now that we know where you're at the moment, but can we jump back to where you were born? I understand you were born in Fiji. And can you also tell us about Rotuman? Last week I had, or just previously I had Joey Kanga from Guam. And so I really like that.
Wow.
They're not small nations, but for us, especially in New Zealand and Australia, they're kind of like, they're not as prominent, or they're lesser known for some reason. I guess it's just because of population.
Yep.
So it's good in a platform like this to even just give some background and some information about those islands we might not hear about as much.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I was born in Suva, Fiji. My mum is full Rotuman, and my dad is half Fijian, half Chinese. And my grandfather, my dad's side is from mainland China. So, yeah, it's a bit of a fruit salad mix. But in terms of Rotuma, so Rotuma, in terms of size, currently has I think less than 2,000 people on the island. So it's tiny, and I think it's 400 k's north of Fiji. So if you looked at it on the map, it is literally, if you even saw it on a map, is a dot in the middle of the ocean. So Rotuma is under the Fijian government, but I guess in terms of culture and traditions, would probably be more aligned with Polynesia and Samoan culture. So yeah, I mean, and I'm talking about Rotuma. I have to admit, I'll tell you a secret, I haven't actually been to Rotuma yet, which is on my wish list. And the reason I haven't been to Rotuma is up until now, you had to get there by boat. So you'd have to fly from New Zealand to Fiji, and then it'd be a 2 or 3 day boat ride to get to Rotuma. And we're not talking, nice cruise ship. Okay. We're talking sleeping on the deck. So, I think I've been in New Zealand far too long because I don't think I would have survived going on the boat ride. So now we have flights. You can get there by plane from Suva. But my mum is from the village of Etamata in Rotuma. My mum moved from Rotuma when she was just after high school. And that's what a lot of people would do. So they move from Rotuma to Fiji for jobs. There is one road that goes around Rotuma. There are no hotels, motels, resorts. There are dairies, shops. That's pretty much it. So it's awesome. Like, it's back to basics, but from the photos that I see and speaking to my family, it's paradise, right? So I'd love to be able to get there. And yeah, so in terms of movement, my mum moved from Rotuma. I still have family in Rotuma, which is awesome. So it'd be great to be able to get there. And then then parents lived in Fiji, met in Fiji, got married in Fiji, had 3 children, and then we moved to New Zealand in 1987 on the day of the first lotto draw in New Zealand. So my dad reminds me all the time, and we still buy tickets, but I'm still yet to win.
One day. So 87, I'm not sure if this is an appropriate question, but was that because of the coup?
Yeah. And then my dad got, was it just before? I'm going to get my dates wrong. I think it was just after the coup, I think. I was 4 at the time when we moved. So don't have a lot of memory. And actually, for preparation for this interview, I texted my sister and I was like, oh, you were a bit older than me when you came. And my brother was a little bit older. So we moved here when my brother was, I think, a teenager. And so I was actually just messaging, asking him how he found, the move from Fiji, where all of our extended family, most of our extended family still is and lives, to such a foreign place like New Zealand at the time. So
did he come back to you? What did he say?
Yeah, my sister reminded me, so I'll share the story with you because she was messaging me earlier. So we moved to New Zealand. My dad was a mechanic, and my mum worked in retail back in Fiji. And so 3 children, and we moved here when I was 4. My dad, there was a lovely man that came to Fiji and sponsored my dad to come to work in New Zealand as a mechanic. Came to New Zealand. We were supposed to move to Rotorua. My dad got a job in Auckland, and then we had nowhere to stay. Like, we had nowhere to live. Couldn't find anything. And so my dad's boss said, well, you can come and stay with me. And he had this, and I remember it now when we still drive past, he had a mansion. It was like a mansion in Kumeu on this lifestyle block. And we were like, oh. And then, according to my sister, my mum was worried that we would break something in the house, so we would wreck the house. And so she said, no, we can't stay in your mansion. And so they gave us a caravan. so we lived in a caravan, so 5 of us on the back of their property in Kumeu for a few months. Yeah. And then we lived there. So that's West Auckland, and I've lived in West Auckland ever since. So after that we actually moved. Then my dad was working at a garage, and we lived in the flat above for a few more years, still in Henderson. And then because we're a new family and we really missed home, I think my parents did as much as they could to connect us or find other Fijian families here in New Zealand or other Rotumans. And so our surname was Lee. And then we found another Fijian family, and their surname was Lee too. And they live in Brisbane now, but then my parents decided that we needed to stay together and help each other out. So they bought a block of land when I say block of land, a section in West Harbour, and we lived side by side, and they built houses that were identical. And we lived there for, I think over a decade side by side. So, I have very fond memories, at that point living in West Harbour, living next door to our new other Lee family. So it was like the two Lees. One lived at 3A and one lived at 3B. So,
confusing the postman.
Taking over. So when came over, my mum was a stay-at-home mum for a long time, not a long time, but when I went to primary school, my mum then went and worked at Caxton, the Caxton factory on Swanson Road in Henderson, which was later Carter Holt Harvey, and then worked there for I think 20 years, over 20 years, making and packing disposable nappies. And then my dad, was a mechanic until he's actually still going, but he retired from being a mechanic a couple of years ago. And then, So and I was so glad that I messaged my sister, and I was like, really? I was like, why did we live in a caravan? She's like, because we had nowhere to live. And I think, when we came over, I was 4, so I guess there are many things that just passed over, but I guess it's interesting because I think about it now. Whenever I'm asked, everyone's like, where do you come from? And I never say New Zealand. I say Fiji. My automatic answer is Fiji. And if I'm asked, what are you? I say Rotuman, Fijian. So, and my children now, they say, well, it's a bit of a hot topic in my house, but my children say that they're Fijian Rotuman. They forget that they're half Samoan too. So,
So dominating the space.
Yeah, so I think if I just keep talking about it enough, they'll say that they're Fijian Rotuman too.
So what was that man? Was he a Palangi dude or was he a Fijian dude?
No.
Why did he do that?
I don't know. Yeah, I to this day I have no idea. And my family was so grateful to him that over the years, we've kept in touch with this, man and his wife, lovely couple, lovely family in Rotorua. We'd go down to visit them. And for a long time, I think my dad did consider them as almost like they're his adopted auntie and uncle that lived in, New Zealand. So, without them, I'm not quite sure what would have happened. So, I think it's the grace and kindness of people like that, things like this can happen, which is, it's pretty cool, right?
Those stories, especially right now where there's a little bit of division. Well, there's a lot of division around race and ethnicity and stuff to show that, there are people who are breaching those boundaries and showing love to others that are outside their own circles. I just want to have a look at, when you said your mum and that they didn't want to stay in the mansion because they were scared they might break something. Do you reckon you would have felt that way too? Is that just a natural kind of thing?
No, I'm pretty sure I was like, why are we staying in the caravan? Why are we not staying in the mansion? I'm pretty sure all of us would have like, Mum, like, why did you say that? But I remember, I was young at the time, but I have fond memories of that family. They were a Croatian family, so our caravan was next to a hall that they had for their Croatian celebrations, and they played petanque next door. And the lady, she was so kind to us. She was so generous. I remember she had a red convertible, and she would take me out to like buy ice blips and stuff, and it was awesome. Like, while we were this immigrant family that had come from Fiji that they really didn't know that well, but I guess kindness and things like that go a long way. So it's awesome. Very grateful.
I think I might know that Lee family here, not the family, but is Travis one of them?
In Brisbane? No, it's Alton and Darwin.
I'm just going to edit that part out. What a botstein. Oh, no, but I love that story, that, this dude came and sponsored you guys and, you could have ended up in Rotorua, but you're there in West Auckland, and West Auckland has been a big part of your life. So which school did you go through?
Yeah, so I went to West Harbour Primary, and then I went to St Dominic's College, which is a Catholic girls' school out west. My sister, my brother, my family's strong Catholic, so my sister went to St Dominic's College as well. My brother went to Liston, across the road to Liston College. So I had a good time at school. Like I reflect back on my time at school, and I enjoyed it. I have made really good friends that I still keep in contact now. And I think because St Dominic's is a smallish school in comparison to some of the other Auckland ones, that sort of environment, works for me. And I think that's, translates to being at Deloitte in a small team as well. Like I really do prefer the small team environment. So yeah, St Dominic's College.
How do you reckon you negotiated your identity through college? Because you're a mix-up of a few different things, Rotuman, Fiji, Chinese. How did the identity story, how did you handle the identity story throughout your teen years?
I think growing up in West Auckland's a pretty diverse place. And St Dominic's College is a diverse school. So there were lots of other islanders, Māori, Asian, European. Like it was a really mixed, diverse school. And if I'm being honest, I probably just didn't even realize, I guess just race wasn't really a thing for me until I hit uni. Because maybe that was just I was being naive at the time, but our family was a big part of the Fijian community, still is really close with our Fijian community. And then I went to school and I saw other people that looked like me, and everyone seemed to get along. All the groups were very mixed. And then it wasn't until I got to uni, and I was in my first year doing economics, and again it was really diverse. It was AUT, so I got a scholarship while I was in school to study at AUT, which I'm really grateful for. And then I got to year one at AUT, and still it was quite diverse. So I was like, still didn't really think anything. And then it wasn't until I got my second and third year, I was like, where did everybody else go?
Just start dropping off.
And I'm pretty sure that was probably like the first time that I became really aware of the lack of representation. I just, and even church, our churches in West Auckland and Ranui, our church is diverse. We've got Māori Pacific, European, a big European congregation. So it just never seemed to be a factor for me because I lived in a diverse area and always had done. So it it was definitely year two at uni. I was like, I'm the only one here.
Did you always want to be an accountant, or did you want to get into something else? And who were your role models growing up?
If I'm being completely honest, at school, I was a good student at school. I think I was the senior scholar for religious education at school, and I was pretty good at economics and accounting, and I did it well. And then uni came round, and it's like, what are you going to do? Just hadn't really thought that far ahead. And my sister and my brother had studied accounting. I was like, okay, well, I'll just do something that they've done and something that I'm good at. And sort of, I really enjoyed my economics degree and did international business as well. And I really enjoyed it. But then I got to the interview and I was like, what am I going to do with the economics degree? There wasn't really a clear pathway for me. But I've worked since, I've been working part-time since I was 16, since it was legal to do so. So, I wanted to find a job and I wanted to find a full-time job quickly. And so I was really lucky to essentially be applying for any roles. And I was really lucky to get a role in the recovery team or insolvency team for a small firm called McCallum Peterson. Okay. And so McCallum Peterson had two sides to the team. So they had solvency, which essentially I was doing liquidations and receiverships. And then the other half was forensics. And I think that 6 months into it, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was like, this is hard. I couldn't, the fact that you're essentially winding down companies and having to, interview directors who have put their heart and soul into a business and it's failed, and then to be a part of the end of it, I really, really struggled with it. And so I remember 6 months and I spoke to one of the bosses at the time. I said, I can't do this. I'm going to quit. I need to find something else. And had found a job doing economics. And then just before I was about to leave, and they came and asked me, they said, well, why don't you give it forensics a go? Why don't you just try it, see if you like it. We're happy to have you. If you don't like it, we'll help you find something else. Cool. That was 14 years ago. So at that time, I had no idea what forensics was. But my first job was, or my first investigation, one of them was doing the Wayne Patterson benefit fraud, which I can talk about because it's in the papers, or was in the papers. And this was a guy that had created 130 false identities to claim superannuation payments from the ministry. And it's to the tune, I think, of about 3.5 million, which at that time was like, it was big money. It was like the biggest benefit fraud at the time. And I remember the excitement of that, just trying to follow the money and figure out where he was going to be next and, what had happened. I've been hooked ever since, really. And I kept saying to people that I think deep down, I really wanted to be a police officer, but I was never tall, fit, or fast enough. So this is a really good fit for me.
Wow, man! So what did I spend his money on?
Oh, well, this is the crazy thing. He was really smart and he was a good investor. So what he had done was he had actually invested his money in Apple shares. Shares and gold bars. And this was 14 years ago, right? So Apple shares, the value went up. The gold bars, he hid it in his, I think, the bathroom ceiling and in the garden, and just cash. And so when the police went around, and I remember seeing it in the newspaper, you had photos of these gold bars that he'd hidden and all these Apple shares that had gone up in value. So, and then later found out that he had been, he'd done the same in other countries as well. So, he's one of these people that I think was, super smart, but perhaps just got a kick out of doing the wrong thing. You just think if he had applied himself doing something else, it could have been a different story.
So you interviewed directors in the liquidation phase. Any tips on or insights around things that commonly came up for them that led to the demise of their companies?
I think at the time, and I think this is still true now with the some of the smaller businesses that we see. And I think, I think of the people that I know, and I think a lot of the ones that we came across, or I came across at that time, you had people that were really good at a certain trade, or, they were good builders, or they were good chefs. And because they were so good at it and were keen to do a business, probably, I suspect, maybe didn't recognize the transition from, being good at it and then developing a business around it. And so, I just remember coming across at that time, lots of construction companies which had tradies who were awesome at what they did, but perhaps, didn't have the support, or, didn't have access to the right expertise and resources to help them build the business around it. So, and at the time, we were doing a lot of the IRD, or the tax department liquidations, and so things like tax, right? When you don't pay your tax. So, but, if you're thinking about it, you're a small business owner, you've got lots of bills, including suppliers and staff. If you have to make a call on who you're going to pay that month, it's probably going to be the people that you're interacting with, that you do business with. And then, things like tax can, we're getting missed at for the ones that we came across. So I think that was probably the most common one that we came across, and it was a shame, right? Because people obviously had a lot of experience and skill in what they were trained to do, but just lacked the resource, really, and the support to take it further.
So put your tax aside.
Pay your taxes, please. PSA on the tax department.
Yeah, because one of the motivations for me to start this thing up was this podcast. That was, I think there's a lot of Pacific people who have got heaps of talent and heaps of experience and heaps of IP, and I think that it's a little bit of a tragedy that they don't take it to market. But the transition of being a technician or an expert in a technical field is really different to jump out and then jump out and then create a business around it, like you say. What are some just the basic elements that people who are in that kind of transition period thinking about monetizing their skills and their IP and experiences, what do you think are some of the key factors for them to consider before or during that transition into their own business?
Yeah, so we're doing some work now with the Pacific Business Trust, which is an organisation in New Zealand. Essentially, their role is to help and support Pacific businesses in New Zealand. And, I think there is so much support and resource for small businesses but we need to do a better job at educating people around what is available to help them make the transition. I think, I imagine it can be really easy to, when you have an idea or a skill and you want to go to the next level, to almost operate in a bit of a silo, right? You just keep going, keep doing day-to-day things, but perhaps if you don't have people to bounce your ideas around or to almost sound check what you're thinking, it can be really easy to almost keep going, have tunnel vision. And running your own business is hard. It's a hard job, and I think people perhaps underestimate the time and the effort and the stress that is involved in running a small business. And so I definitely think there's so much opportunity to go to that next level, but it's not a decision that should perhaps be taken lightly. And I think, places like the Pacific Business Trust that offer free advisory and business support to Pacific business owners. I mean, it's what an awesome resource for people to have. And, things like your strategy or helping you with your accounts and your taxes or giving you some advice around procurement and tendering. I think if we can connect the dots a little bit in terms of where the need is and the services that are available for people, I think, that would go a long way to at least hopefully having a better outcome with more successful businesses in New Zealand.
Yeah, but even outside of New Zealand, like here in Australia, I've started a couple of businesses here, and I know that even like the government, I know my perspective is that the government wants small and medium enterprises to win. Yeah. Because, you're going to employ people and you're going to, stimulate the economy and stuff like that. So whether it's Pacific tailored, which we're really envious of because New Zealand has a lot of that stuff, and we're just across the ditch and we don't have that much. But it doesn't really matter whether it's Pacific tailored or not. You still got a lot of support and resources, whichever country you're in, that you need to tap into. But I just like the insights there because, I think a lot of people are kind of thinking about whether they're going to jump in, and I think they need to be measured in that. And I think what you said is, don't underestimate the time and the energy and the resources you need is great advice.
So on that, because I think what we can see, like when we see another business doing well, you only see the shiny parts, right? And you only see the positive one, you see the people with new cars, I guess you only see the positive from an external perspective, and, you don't know all the peddling and the hard work and the long hours and the long nights that go in behind it. And so I think not to put people off doing it, because I think it's a great opportunity and great way to get our people ahead. I think it's just, making, I guess, informed decisions around what you're going to do and, having a good view on timing and what are you actually selling. I think it's just making sure that we're thinking it through. Not being drawn into the glitz and the glamour of owning your own business.
The Instagram of business.
The Instagram.
But you're right, because I've, personally, I've helped a few people come through and think about their business idea. And, when you're a technician, you kind of know what value you can provide. But sometimes the marketing and the communication part is off because it's not what the market is at that moment. It's not what you believe they need. It's what they believe they need.
Totally.
Simple concept is really difficult for technicians and for, people who have expertise. They find it hard to jump into the shoes of the market and then speak to them with the right marketing material and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome insight. It's I know what I'm good at and I know what I want to sell. You should just buy it. Why wouldn't you buy it? So, it's awesome insight that you're right. It's I know what I want to do. And perhaps not realizing what people are prepared to pay for. And my brother, so my older brother John, him and his wife, they've I think must be 10 years now. They've been developing and setting up and running daycare or early childcare centres in Northland for about a decade now, and they've done a few, and their latest one is awesome. It's called Mini Fi's in Mangawhai. Oh. But I guess and I only see snippets of it. It's hard work. It's hard work running your own business. It's hard work when you have staff. It's hard work keeping things going. So I take my hat off to anybody that runs their own business because I'm very aware that it's not all shiny all the time.
Yeah, no, actually my brother runs a few in South Auckland. I think he's got 4 or 5 across East and South Auckland. And man, I see him. There's lots of benefits because he gets to work from home and he's got flexibility. But yeah, one of the toughest things I think is the staff, managing staff and leading staff, and that's why I wanted to ask you.
I was like, is it me?
No, my wife's phone is attached to this, I think. So I was like, what? Unprofessional. But, I'll figure out how to edit that. But yeah, he's got the flexibility and stuff. But I think one of the hardest things for him is managing staff and making sure, how Deloitte's got directors, associate directors, and you've got levels and layers that have been kind of formed and formulated over years of experience. That's really tough as well, especially when you scale really quickly. Yeah.
And the skills shortage too, right? Like especially in early childcare centres, because of the rules around having qualified staff and the ratios, there's a shortage. So you've got to do that to deal with as well, right? So, lots of people seem to be in early childcare centres at the moment.
Well,
we might be in the wrong business, Andrew.
It's an essential service, so. So now you're in finance crime. Man, that sounds like such a foreign concept to, I reckon, many of us, finance crime. And is that, what is that?
Yeah, so here in New Zealand we'd call, so I'm in the forensic team and there are a couple of different bits, but I'd be in the financial crime team, and it sounds very CSI, and parts of it definitely are. It sounds very CSI, but essentially I guess it's just trying to, either stop people from doing the wrong thing or catch it when it does happen. And so for the early parts of my career, when I was doing fraud investigations, another big part of my work was doing what we call probity reviews. So let's say government department funds non-profit, X amount of dollars to deliver a service. And so we were doing lots of reviews to make sure that the money was being spent on what it should be, essentially. And during that time, we did a truckload of fraud investigations in that space. And, these are my personal views, by the way, Drew. And there were a few times where I'd be having to interview, people that you could see that deep down they were good at their job. They were delivering good service to the community, but perhaps got caught up, doing the wrong thing for whatever. There are so many different motivations for why people do things they perhaps shouldn't. Things from we saw lots of stories where addiction, whether it be gambling or alcohol or drugs, was the motivation. We saw, definitely lots where it was greed. And then we saw, a large chunk where it's, it's financial pressure, whether it's home life or, bills to pay. And, you'd be surprised at the different types of people that we come across when we're interviewing for a fraud investigation or a financial crime case. It's all walks of life. There are two profiles. So there's normally the dominant executive type, normally male, normally middle-aged, and there's certain personality that comes with that. And then the second profile is female, sort of middle management office staff, but the motivations are completely different. People that have been in their job for a really long time have become really good at their role. People trust them. People go to them for advice. They never take any holidays. They never take any leave. They're always working hard, and perhaps they were overlooked for a promotion or they had some other pressures happening behind. But they have, it's been really interesting, and I'm sad to say that probably over my 14 careers, the majority of the ones that I've done have probably been female. So, and we can't judge what people do, but yeah, it's been really interesting. It opened my eyes around just the different walks of life and different motivations and reasons for why people do what they do. But I get a lot of satisfaction out of my job. I think I enjoy finding out how it happened and why it happened and how did they do it. Like, I guess the how part. But also when someone has done something wrong, being able to either work with their employer, from an employment perspective, or whether it might be referring the job to or the file to the police or the serious fraud office for further action. I get a huge amount of satisfaction from the work that I do in the forensic financial crime space.
So we can make assumptions around the motivations for the other profile, the middle-aged man, powerful kind of dude. What was your take on their motivations?
I'm being very stereotypical, but most of the ones that I've done was greed. Yeah, flash house, flash car. This lifestyle was probably, and I'm completely generalizing, but if I had to profile, sorry, was that interesting?
Maybe financial pressures from living that lifestyle, and then maybe dip in something they can't make payments in that, and then.
And I'm telling you that once you start, it's very hard to stop. And most people don't stop until they're caught. And we call it a hockey stick. So when we're investigating a crime, sorry, I'm not doing a very good job, but you start down here, and then, when they start, they're in relatively low amounts. And it's usually, we say it's because they're testing it to see if they'll get caught. And if it's a low amount, you could usually explain, oh, it's an error, I didn't mean to do it, I can pay it back. And then if the pattern between the first one and the second one is usually, spread, they might wait a month to see if it's picked up during monthly processes. So it's, I guess, a bit spread out and flat, and the amounts are relatively consistent. But the longer it goes, and the longer that people keep going without being detected, it just goes like this in terms of the amount and the amounts being taken. And, we put that down to people become confident they haven't been caught. So keep going, and then people get greedy as well. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating work, and
regular, consistent, small amounts.
You have to edit that bit out. Yeah, just don't get greedy. Don't get greedy is the story of the day.
Oh my goodness, man, that's so interesting, eh?
Yeah, and I must say, so in our work, like that's definitely that's the exciting part, right? Like that's the exciting part of the job. But because we know that puts us in a really good place to help organisations stop it from happening in the first place. You know what I mean?
For me, just my assumption is that a lot of it is insecurity. A lot of it is stuff that's related to themselves, but usually outside of the role. For you as a kind of a risk analyst and a preventer of these things, how do you design for those insecurities that are really at the bottom of why they're doing this stuff?
So, I think there are a couple of different buckets. There's controls and processes, right? There are just checks and balances that you should have in place to stop this from happening. But I think the biggest control, the biggest thing any organisation can do, whether it's small, big, different industry, doesn't matter, it's culture, organisation culture. If people are committed, they're satisfied, they're happy, it's a pretty big jump to ripping off your employer or, ripping off the organisation. So I guess from our experience, a lot of the times when we're called into, not every time, right? Like not all the time, but a lot of the cases, the organisational culture is poor. People are unhappy in their roles. There's a poor tone from the top in terms of what is acceptable or not. The culture part I can't emphasize how important that is to get it right, as a control really, to stop people from doing things like this. So,
man, that's a knowledge bomb right there, because I think, that's kind of what I was getting at when I was asking the question. These things are really deep-seated, these insecurities, and that are deep-seated, and really the essence of, in terms of organizational psychology, we think of our values, and our values shaping our and our beliefs up to our actions. And so the values of the organization are critical in terms of the culture that they foster and the culture that they nurture. And I think it's the same in my work in community as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't really want to rip off a community that you feel strongly attached to. So then how do we create a strong connection between an individual or a family and the community in which they live? And I think we need to do that for universities too. Sometimes their research is coming out really separate from the communities in which they're located. And so it's cool to see how these themes are spreading across. I just did a PD, I guess, for Serco, and they run prisons.
Yep.
They're like, can you tell us how to do this? And I was like, man, these are questions that kind of probably to be honest, are the wrong questions because really it's not ethnic culture that needs to be examined, organizational culture. We're looking for better outcomes with a certain group of people. Usually it comes to organizational culture. So I love how this conversation has gone from finance, really.
Sorry.
Down to values. And values is the thing that is underneath the iceberg that really connects us. But the tips of the iceberg are very separate, right? So I just love how that's come to, our conversations come to that part. So how would you design for organizational culture, or is that your responsibility, or is that something that you recommend to your clients?
We definitely have experts where organizational culture and transformation and things like that, they're the experts. So I'm definitely not an expert in that area, but I think your comment around values, and it's one thing to have these things in documents. This is the company mission, these are our values, we want you to do X, Y, and Z. Like, that's the easy part. And I think people can get caught up in thinking, oh, but we have a code of conduct policy and we have our mission. Oh, we're like ticking all the boxes. But, it's no good if your people, especially your leaders, don't demonstrate that in their day-to-day interactions with people. So, it's definitely not my field, but I guess where I've seen it work well is when leaders of the business exhibit what is written in their company policies and documents, and they sort of play it out. So, that's probably. Does that help, Andrew?
Yeah, that helps massive. That's so cool. That's amazing. I just love it. All right, so what's growing up? Were there any role models that you looked up to in particular?
For me, would without a doubt be my family. So my mum and dad, and my sister, my older sister, my older brother. So we're a few years apart. So my sister would be 7 years older than me, and then my brother's 12 years older than me. So I've always been the baby, but I've always had really good role models. And my brother and my sister have been really successful in their own right. My sister lives in France, has lived there for about 15 years as an accountant in France, and has four kids. And then my brother's doing really well as well. He has 3 children, lives up north. So, for me, it's been my siblings and my parents, right? My parents are hard workers. So I didn't have to look far for good role models. And, I had a great childhood, and, I'm very, I guess, proud of the relationship that I have with my family. And then, my husband's probably going to listen to this. So, I met my husband when I was really young. So I met my husband when I was 17. So we've been together for a while now. And, I'm very grateful that I met my husband so early on, right? I feel like it helped me stay out of trouble. It just helped me stay the path. And, what are we now? 18 years. It's on the other side of it's awesome. So I've always had a close circle. So I probably haven't been someone that's had, lots and lots of friends, but I've really valued and tried to look after the relationships of those that I hold close, which is my family and my husband, my in-laws, and also, a couple of friends that I have from school and uni, and, friends that I've been friends with for over 10 years now. So, for me, it's without a doubt my family and friends as role models.
How cool is that? I was just thinking because, in a massive organization like Deloitte, and you being a Pacific woman, what did that feel like? Did you feel like, did you feel like you were a minority in this big ass machine, or is the culture in Deloitte? Not that we're going to talk about Deloitte or throw stones at them, but how did you feel as a Pacific woman in this in one of the big four?
I was talking to someone earlier about it. I mean, in Big Four, corporate, in these big consulting firms, we are underrepresented. We're underrepresented as both Māori, Māori and Pasifika people in places and spaces like this. So I think, and again, when I first started, I was just lucky. I was just so grateful that I had a job and, in a cool place. So I was first at McCallum Peterson, and then we merged or were bought by Deloitte. And that's how I came over to Deloitte as an analyst or a junior. And then when we came over, so I came from this team of, 20 people, and my bosses from that team are still my bosses now, or my mentors. So, those are, I can't, in terms of career role models, my partners from the McCallum Peterson firm are definitely big career role models for me. So then we came over to Deloitte, and then you're just thrown into this machine, right? Like, it's a big environment. There are lots of people, lots of really smart, competitive, personalities, which takes some getting used to. And yeah, when you look around, there aren't that many people that look like you. And for a long time, and to be honest, still now, have always struggled with imposter syndrome. Just always have, right? And I remember, like, in the early days, I would try everything I possibly could to almost like just fly below the radar, because I didn't want someone to like come and tap me on the shoulder and be like, excuse me, like, who let you in? Like, why are you here? And and it's great to be an associate director and to be, leading the Pasifika firm, Pasifika Services Group now. But, I still even now struggle with it, right? Like, I don't know what it is. It's hard to shrug off. And every now and then it will hit me. It'll be like, oh man, what are you doing? You're still there. So it's been hard, and I recognise the challenge that faces still now for a lot of our young people coming through. We still, still not a lot of people that look like us in any, and that's not just specific to Deloitte, in any of the corporate spaces. So yeah, it's hard, and for me, the key has been like trying to find my people, like trying to find your tribe. They might not be, from the same background, but connecting and having a, really good support group of friends in the places that you work, I think, is important. So, and having good managers and leaders, people that support you is, is really important too. So yeah, definitely struggled with it. But now, having been in this space for a while, I take it as a really serious responsibility to show, I guess, young Pacific people that this is a role that they can be in too. So, the part of my job that I really love now is connecting and helping our Pacific team, which is made up of very talented young people, which is awesome.
Do you think imposter syndrome is one of those things that you're never going to eradicate, but you're going to conquer by understanding it and then knowing how you're going to respond to it? Which one of those?
Yeah, I 14 years, I'm still battling with it. So, when I talk to the grads, I'm like, I'd love to say that a couple of years' time this will go away, but I think you're right, just recognizing that when you feel it, and almost, you have to check yourself and share it with other people and get other people to remind you about why you're here as well. Like, I'm a big believer, and I probably overshare, but I'm really open with sharing how I'm feeling with my team, probably too much, and to have them, I guess, almost be a sounding board for me and to reassure me that I'm doing the right thing and that I am in the right space, and and I should be here. It's really important for me, and having that information internally is good, right? But for me personally, I need other people to support me.
That's awesome, and I appreciate your honesty, because I think a lot of people take a lot out of that, getting the right support, being able to verbalize your, the fact that you're going through imposter syndrome and any other kind of thing that is a rattle in your ear that is kind of that's something that can hold us back from fulfilling our potential. And this is a podcast around success, and I think without doubt, everyone who I've talked to has said, even with Apollo, when you listen to Apollo, he said he came off the line because he was scared. He was actually scared to get hit himself. And that's why he went and hit others, served it up first. But, I really appreciate that.
Sorry, Andrew. I was just going to say on there, I think the other time that it's really hit me is when I had my kids and then being a full-time working mum. I guess I've always had the imposter syndrome and then always had it as being a Pasifika person in, a corporate space. And then I had my kids, and I've got 2 kids now, so 7 and 3. And then it's like, oh, hold on, now I'm working full time and having mum guilt for my kids being at daycare and being looked after by other people. And then I just remember, like, when I first came back from maternity leave, I really struggled with it. It took me a really long time to be back to where I wanted to be work-wise, because I was like, I was working part-time for a little bit. I was having to leave early to pick up my kids, and then everyone else is still working, but I have to go. And I remember, another secret, I would put my jacket on my chair and be like, so they still think I was there when I had to go and pick up my kids. And so, and then I guess not being able to, always feeling like you were never doing anything 100%. And I talk about it now, that being a working parent, and sorry, this probably just doesn't apply to working parents, but for me, being a working mum, you're torn, because you want to be doing both things, being a parent and an employee 100%, but you can't, just time-wise you can't. And so, I've always, been struggling with, how do you, I've never, felt like you're doing everything but half, giving 50% to, and not doing enough as a parent, and then not doing enough as an employee. And how do you rationalize that in your brain, that that's an unrealistic expectation that you could do both 100%? And so, when we talk about imposter syndrome, I found like it's hit me a couple of times. It's definitely recognizing Pacific in a non-Pacific space, and then as a Pacific working mum too. So, from West Auckland. And no one else is from West Auckland.
No, I can hear that, because I hear I honestly hear it from my wife as well. Like, she feels like she's not progressing as much as she wanted in any realm. But then the mother, that being a mum, we've got 3 kids and they're really young, 6, 5 and 2. Even for me, I'm thinking, man, am I working too much and not hanging out with them enough? And when is enough? And I guess we're always going to have those questions, but we need I think just sharing this out loud will help others who are going through it to know that there are others going through it.
Yeah, and I think an important part for me is, and this is hard, right? It's easy to say, is trying not to compare yourself with other people and other people's journeys. And I think, it's especially when you come back to work part-time, or you've been away for a little bit, it's like, you're always trying to keep up with everybody else, just is never a good idea. And for me, I think over the last year or two, it's just being really clear about what I want to achieve here and what I want as a mum, and then just making sure that you stay the lane with that, rather than trying to go looking around and going, what about Bob and Mary? But I'm very conscious that's easy for us to say, but difficult to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Trying.
Lived in a vacuum.
Work in progress. It's definitely work in progress.
It's awesome. I think, I really appreciate these conversations, because they're real and they're raw and they're they're honest from a person who's sitting in a really influential position. So it makes us, all us lesser people, it makes us feel really, really comforted, actually, in the fact that other people are going through it. Just kind of to wind it down, if you invited 3 people to dinner, who would they be?
Damn, Andrew, should have prepared for this one. So one, I know who the first one would be. So my uncle Begin passed away, I think, over 10 years ago. My dad's youngest brother, and he was the best, and he passed away suddenly from a heart attack. And we were really close with him. So he would be definitely my number one. And my son is named after him. So, to be able to introduce him to my kids and, would just be awesome. So my uncle Begin. And then secondly, I'm such an Obama fan. Big time. And I'd like to have them both, but if I had to pick one, I'd go with Michelle. but definitely be Michelle Obama, and then you know, and I'm thinking of, I just think she's so inspirational, and she's, you know, when you think about role models beyond your circle, I think she's just an awesome role model. You know, she comes across as, you know, super authentic, very, but, you know, good at what she does, and smart and onto it and courageous. So I just think she's a great role model for young girls. And then, and this is beyond my family, so I'm thinking further, being a Catholic, and I'm such a fan of the Pope at the moment. So I would have the Pope, Michelle, and my uncle. And then if I had a fourth one, can I invite Beyonce too?
No, you can't. She's going to dance with the Pope.
So it's a pretty eclectic dinner party, Andrew, that you got there.
I don't know what you're going to eat.
My parents, if they listen to this, they would be really proud that I said the Pope.
So we're still doing things for our parents.
Oh, you're totally. It's all for our parents, right? Even when you become one.
Just to wind it down, like for people coming up, maybe even if we targeted at young Pacific women or young Pacific girls, what kind of advice would you give them if you had the chance to speak to them? What advice would you give them in terms of living a thriving and successful life, whatever success means to them?
If I phrase it if I put in the context of working in a corporate space and working in a Big Four or a professional services firm like Deloitte or any of the others, I heard this bit of advice from, so I can't remember who, but I think it's really good advice, is while you might be one in a really big company, you still need to treat it as if you're running your own business. So you're one, but you need to think about your brand, you know, we're thinking about how you interact with other people, you know, thinking about delivering a good service, thinking about how you're going to sell yourself, how you're going to get on different projects. And so, you know, I think for this environment, I think that's great advice to consider is, yes, you're one of many, but in terms of progressing and doing well and enjoying your work here, thinking about yourself as your own little brand or business, I think is really good advice. And then I think for, you know, Pasifika girls wanting to enter into spaces that aren't traditionally for them, right? Like you don't see many examples. Somebody's got to do it. Like somebody's going to be the first. So we got to start somewhere, and sometimes, you know, I guess we just have to have the courage and the support from the people around us that we know that we can do it. And, you know, it's hard to be the first to do anything, but isn't it great to be the first as well? Like, you know what I mean? To set the scene for others to come through. And I think in moments of doubt, you just have to think that there's a bigger piece to this, right? Like it might be hard. You might be, you know, be really struggling with being the only one in some spaces. But if people can see you as an example of what is possible, then, you know, what an awesome role to be able to play, right? Like what a great opportunity to be a role model for somebody else. So, you know, when I see young people coming into corporate spaces, I'm like, far out, guys, it's hard. But somebody's got to do it, and you can do it too. So we just have to be bold, right? We just have to be bold, and that's the other word that I keep hearing, and here is we always use the word deliberate. Awesome. Being deliberate about what you do, and so not leaving things up to chance. And so, and I'm probably not a very good example, to be honest, when I look back at my career, because I sort of just went with, I like my team, I like my work, I'll just keep going, you know, so I'm probably not somebody that's a good example of being deliberate. But if you can think through what you want to do and take deliberate steps or actions to get there, no matter how long it might take, at least you know that you're on the right path. So yeah, you know, when we do leadership training here and things like that, that's always a key word here. It's being deliberate.
That's awesome. So I really appreciate it. I like that one and many because I think it really reflects specific people as well. We're individuals within the collective, and we have to think about both, I think. You know, sometimes people said, oh, they didn't go to university or they didn't do this and that because they had to give back to the collective, and other people would say, oh, that's great, but what about their individual pursuits? I think we have to try to balance those kinds of things as Pacific people generally, given that we've chosen to live in a Western framework and in a capitalistic society as well, with all those things. But I also like how you've brought it back to values of being courageous and bold. And, I think you have been deliberate. I think you've been deliberate in the fact that you've wanted to enjoy your work and enjoy the people you work with and enjoy the people you work for. So for you, what's the next stages for Lisa?
Andrew, I'm so excited by our Pasifika group here. I want to take this team as far as we can and to make as big of an impact for our community as possible. I'm really excited by it and, keen to see it grow, and wherever that may take me or take the team, great. The further we go, the better. But the opportunity to, because I think for me, from a career perspective, I've always been pulled. Sorry, Andrew, I know you're trying to wind it up, but I'm stuck going. I think for me, the reason we went down this lane is because a year ago I said to our partners or to our leaders, look, I'm going to go do something different. Had a good time, but I need to work with my community. I'm going to find another role that allows me to do that. And one of our partners here, his name's Jason, he challenged me. He said, well, why do you need to leave to do it? Why can't you stay here and help your community? And why can't you use, essentially the power of the firm and the brand to help you serve your people? And, I'm really grateful for him putting that challenge to me, because it did make me stop and almost, we don't have to do things the way that we've always done them. We can do something different and something new. And I've gone completely off track, but I'm really excited about where this might take us. And, for us, the fact that we can be working, a corporate or a big four or a professional services firm can be helping Pacific businesses, mum, dad businesses directly, and community group. It's exciting. I just think what a great, if we can provide resource to people that want to do things, then it's awesome. And we get a lot of, fulfillment and joy out of working with our people. So I love my forensic stuff, but the Pasifika services is it's exciting for me.
Yeah, and how lucky are those people coming through that they're going to have an automatic network when they join when they join Deloitte, certainly, that they'll have that network there that you've created. And I'm so glad it's branded with the Rotuman language.
I got that one. Andrew, I did ask for feedback from the team. It was are you sure you don't want to use it? I get feedback, but you have to give me the feedback in 5 minutes. And it's and the Rotuman name means a lot for us, because when we talked about, well, what do we want behind the name? It wasn't just a name to put, that didn't have any meaning. We were really deliberate about trying to convey the type of work that we want to do, and we worked with the Rotuman language advisors to come up with something that would work for us. And Pås Peau, breaking through waves, which is essentially what we're trying to do, is trying to do something different, and trying to do something different for our community. So I'm super happy about the name, and I'll have to show you the logo or the new branding that we have, because it's a turtle and it's awesome. I'm really, really, really super happy with it.
All right, well, thanks, Lisa. Man, what a cool chat. I thought accountants were boring.
Andrew, I'm not an accountant.
I know, but I come from a traditional accounting firm. I thought, we're going to talk numbers and risk.
Oh no, that's not me.
I've really enjoyed even the business insights to the cultural insights, to the values and organizational insights. But man, I can see that I'm kind of envious of your team too. I reckon I'd thrive under your leadership, because I like the fact that you're authentic, you got a sense of humor, you take yourself to work and you encourage other people to do that. You understand values and you understand diversity and the importance of it. And I just reckon that I want to come and work for you guys.
Cool.
I don't want to relocate to Auckland.
Oh, that's the only. It's not that bad, Andrew. No, thank any time. But congratulations on the work you're doing. Far out. I'm such a fan of the work you're doing, especially this podcast series. And to be on it is pretty cool. I'm very appreciative of it. So you keep going too. You're doing an awesome job. And the stories that are coming out of the series are amazing. So it's my privilege to be on here. So thank you for inviting me.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
All right. Take care.